Okay.
Got a notice here, and then Facebook's going to let everybody know we're here. They can join us for a lunch and learn here.
Okay.
So just popping on, just let me know that you're here, whether you're live or replay. Love knowing who the action takers are. And Carl wants to know who's joining in as well, or maybe not. So Carla's here, and she's going to share a little bit about her story. And we're actually, I'm really loving this topic that we're going to talk about today too, in terms of how to move to intuitive place, because that's actually been coming up a lot when I'm talking to clients. So I think it's going to be of service to a lot of clients and provide a lot of value in here, you sharing your story here. So again, if you're just jumping on, just stay here, say, and let me know if you're here live or what have you. So Sue says here, good. We know we're working, so we're good. So Carla, welcome. Thank you for doing this. And then I thought maybe we could just start with an introduction. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Sure. My name's Carla Fry. I was Carla Pierce for a lot of years, and I'm from Strathroy area, Strathroy, Glencoe, Melbourne. Yeah. But I live in Airdrie, Alberta now, just north of Calgary. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 15 years. And before I moved out here, I worked as an administrative assistant. I played in my family band. Yeah, lots of things, but I'm really happy found my husband out here and just never went home. So here I am.
Yeah. Don't forget you have a dog.
Oh yeah, I have my dog. Ryder is 8. He's a yellow lab, and we go on lots of walks together and do a little hiking together once in a while. And yeah.
So well, let's get started here. Okay, so you had tried to lose weight before, and here you are. You were like at this place, and you reached out to me. Like, so what was that all about? Talk about that piece there.
Yeah, I think COVID had a big part of it, but my journey prior to that was I was always on a diet. I was always trying something different. Weight Watchers was kind of my go-to, and I would hop on with that, and then I would stop because I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see, and it was just really frustrating. And then COVID hit, and I packed on the pounds like crazy. And then approaching my 50th birthday, I realized that this is not the direction that I want to be going. And I wanted to be healthier. I wanted to have a lifestyle that I could enjoy and still be active. And I wanted to set myself up for that going forward. So, because I was already having aches and pains and just not feeling great. So I work as a teacher, like I said, and it's a stressful job. And so stress was kind of feeding into that problem as well, with stress eating and not following a routine and just, yeah, being lacking energy on the couch every night after supper and not doing anything with myself. So yeah, there was a lot of things that kind of just came to a head, and I needed to do something different. And I saw Jennifer Ryan's journey, and I thought maybe I need to investigate. And that's when I contacted Cindy.
Oh, well, I didn't know it came from Jennifer Ryan.
It did, yeah.
Oh, good. She's inspired quite a few people, actually.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. So, okay. So when we did that first call, there were a couple of things. Is one, a lot of your approaches never dealt with the emotional eating, never helped with the stress management. They actually maybe added elements to that, and never really looked at the mindset pieces, because you were used to foods can and can't have. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit, because you have certain times a year where there's like tripwires. So report card time, September rolls around, end of the year, but you also said summer, where you're kind of off routine. So some people some women watching this will wait until like the perfect time to get involved. And really, when you wait for the perfect time, it's like you learn how to do things when it's perfect. But generally, we're pretty good at doing things when things are good. We're just not good at doing things when things aren't so good. And so here you were, we coached together during end of year, during report cards, and during summer vacation too. And you had a couple of trips in there. So just talk about the value of maybe coaching, or what you did, or what you learned about doing it when things weren't going perfectly.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me from this journey has been the planning piece, and knowing that if I don't have a plan in place, that's when things fall apart. And that's when I start, hitting the drive-through or just grabbing something quick out of the pantry because I don't have time to cook, things like that. So the planning piece was key for me to get into that kind of a routine. So I think that is the thing that allowed me to get through those more stressful times. If I took the time on the weekend to plan, I didn't feel as defeated, I guess, or pressured to do one more thing after I got home from work. So having that planning in place was really key for me.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, and having that routine of being active at times when it wasn't necessarily ideal for me, at least I thought it wasn't. And then I started doing some workouts before going to work, and it meant an early morning, but at the same time, it actually has worked out really well for me. So
Yeah.
routines and routine is huge.
So let's go back, because sometimes planning can feel really daunting to people, right? It's like, I don't want to spend, X number of time, and I'm not good at that. And planning is the first thing to go when things are out of routine. So just talk about like me, and maybe you felt like that too before. So like talk about that planning aspect. What did that really look like?
Until it became a habit, I hated it. I'm not gonna lie. I hated every minute of it. I hated that it took me so long to plan out the week. And then you and I had talked about that, and we strategized a little bit so we could break it down into like 2 times a week I was planning rather than once. But at the same time, the time that it took to invest in that, I was really bothered by, because I felt like I was losing a day from my week because I'm sitting here trying to plan meals or prepping meals and things like that. But once it became habit, then it wasn't a problem anymore. It had to move from being a task that I didn't enjoy doing to becoming a habit or a routine that just is part of what I do now.
Yeah, I love that you're honest with that, because sometimes when you're starting out, it is more time consuming, or you don't feel it. But the value of that is that it keeps you kind of focused and on track as you're moving through the busy parts of your life, basically. And then it's easier.
I think that's the whole point of this, is that it's the mind shift that never actually took place in all the other things that I tried. So now it's like, okay, I'm thinking more about it with more purpose than I ever have before.
Yeah, I like that you said with more purpose, because I think a lot of women already do spend a lot of time thinking about food and exercise in their body and weight loss or whatever. But you're saying now it's like you've narrowed your focus to be like, this is just what I need to focus on. I don't, all this is noise or wondering and worrying, and this is where my purpose is coming from.
Right.
Yeah. And then you brought up exercise in the mornings. Okay. So this was a big one for you, because it was like, Carla was doing limited movement. You were just doing the walks with your dog to get him going. And then we were looking at windows of time where we could get in a little bit of movement, right? And we faced a little bit of resistance about up just a little bit earlier to do it, but you were motivated to do yoga. You had some back pain and you were like, I know yoga helps me with that. So you wanted to figure out how to fit in the yoga, and we were looking at a window of time that you had in the morning. So can you just walk them through like that resistance there and how that took shape?
Yeah, I'm an early starter. My work day starts at 8 a.m. So and I like to be at school for 7. So I need that hour in the morning just to get myself organized and ready for work. So that already makes it a really early morning. So factor in a half-hour walk with the dog in the morning. I'm already up at like 5:30. So when Cindy suggested I set the alarm 15 minutes earlier, I'm like, no, I'm already up early enough. I'm not doing that. But I finally agreed, and I did. And again, it's one of those things that has turned into a habit, and it wasn't easy at first, but now that I'm doing it often, it feels good. It's just another great start to my day.
And you've lost a significant amount of weight, and we didn't do a lot of exercise. It was walking the dog and it was your 15 minutes of yoga, and you still lost a tremendous amount of weight. And I can imagine that that was a lot different than your previous times losing weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was lots of intermittent hitting the gym, like going hard and then not seeing the results that I wanted to see and then giving up basically. So this was something that actually worked for me, and it feels good. And now I'm at a place where the body feels better, and I'm wanting to do more things. So it's a journey that I plan to continue on, and hopefully can increase that.
Yeah, I love that, because yoga in the morning was about getting your body to perform better with less pain, right? And
Right.
so we figured out how to do that. The walking was already happening with the dog. We were just now counting that as exercise, where we weren't really doing that before. And we started there. And now, like after all these months, you're in a position where you're like, you're joining a fitness class with a couple of your colleagues and stuff. And I like that we highlight that, because a lot of clients think like they have to start, you know, at that end point, and you're showing them like, that's not, I lost a lot of weight and that's not how I did it, right? Exercise was actually the thing that I worked on the least out of everything else.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
talk about, like, let's shift into, because that covers exercise and that covers like planning. Let's talk about food. So you kind of went through in your past dieting history or losing weight, it was more about what you couldn't have. And that's not the approach that we took together. So can you talk about the connection between mindset and nutrition for you?
Yeah, it was that took time too. My lifestyle as it is we're very social people, and we like to go out, and we often meet at our favorite brewery on a Friday afternoon, and I enjoy beer. And so that's, I know now, is not necessarily something that I should indulge in often. So anyway, it was one of those, that was an eye opener for sure, that I needed to kind of cut back on that. I didn't need to be having those beverages to that extent.
Yeah, so let's just clarify though, like you could go to that extent if you wanted to,
Totally.
more of
Yep.
like, you were connecting social with having to drink beer, and we figured out what you really wanted out of your social experience that had nothing to do with the amount of beer.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So just noticing all the things that instead of coming from a place of restriction of like, I can't do that anymore. It was more of a like, well, what can I do so that I can enjoy the social aspect of being out and visiting with friends and what have you. So I definitely recognize now that the choices that I make throughout the week and throughout the day need to be a little more mindful, that I need to recognize that proteins and vegetables are key, especially if I am going to have beverages or snacks or whatever on that particular day. So it was definitely a shift of like, let's focus on definitely proteins and vegetables and less carbs during the rest of the week, really maximizing that so that I could enjoy those things. So yeah.
Yeah. And so when you were enjoying them, we had two rules. One is eat slow and eat mindfully, which meant like, one, you're trying to be as present in, let's say, drinking the beer or eating the wings or whatever. We're trying to be as present as we can. We're trying to eat them as slowly. And then you and I worked on intention. Well, when you're being social and you're going here, what do you want to feel? What do you want to experience? And we worked on, okay, so you know, if you're having more drinks, it's like, how does that serve your intention? Because at the end, we want to walk away from that experience being like, I feel good. I don't feel energy. I don't feel like I have to start over. I don't feel like I've been deprived. I feel good. Right. And so that's a big mindset shift in and of itself, in terms of like you said, I'm not coming from a place of I can't, I'm coming from a place of what do I want to have?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just being really careful and mindful about the choices that you're making. And the other piece too, is we do a lot of group weekends away and things like that, and food that would always be like one of the things that we do, and everybody's responsible for bringing a meal or what have you. And we talked a lot about how I can control that situation and make it better for me so that I'm making better choices. And so we talked about how I can create a dish or a meal that I know I can enjoy on any given day when we're out with friends, and no, and feel good about eating it. So that was definitely something that I started to do when we
Yeah,
were
while not feeling like you're the oddball, like, sorry, I'm on a diet, I can't eat that, or sorry, no, I
yeah,
got my little pre-packaged food. Like, you still
right,
are part
yeah,
of it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And then, so before we kind of get into, because I think like the message is clear, is like, hey, there was a lot of focused energy and a lot of purpose when we first started to develop the habit. Just like when you did the planning, there was around, navigating these social situations. And then eventually they got to an easier place. But the first thing we started with was like tracking, right? And so there's two sides to that. You're going to run into the people who are like, I don't want to track. It feels very diety, feels very rigid. It doesn't feel freeing at all. It's too time consuming or what have you. But we used it. And I imagine with you counting points with Weight Watchers, that's how you approached it. How is
Mhm.
this approach different?
Yeah, to be honest, it's really quite similar, in the sense that, yeah, you write down everything you eat in a day. But with this piece, I feel like knowing how many proteins I was allowed to eat and how many carbs I needed to have and how many fats and that kind of thing, I feel like that was way more effective for me as opposed to a point system, because I wasn't necessarily sure where all my points were coming from, like which food groups
Mhm.
all the points were coming from with Weight Watchers. So for me, tracking it this way made me way more aware of the number of carbs I was consuming in a day and fats for sure.
Yeah.
So and how few vegetables I was eating. So tracking it that way definitely helped me to make more balanced choices for sure.
And then how was it connected to mindset when you were tracking? So how did we make the connections to, because sometimes we eat because we've had a bad day or there's an emotional reason or whatever, or we're mindlessly slacking. How did that work with the tracking?
Um, I think the planning ahead definitely helped with the mindset for sure. And if I had all of my snacks and meals prepared and planned, then it wasn't. I didn't fall into the trap of mindlessly eating, right?
Mhm.
Um, and knowing then that I could just um, follow the plan that I had set up in front of me, that I would manage well, right? I just, yeah, it actually took away a lot of those moments of where I could have just come home and sat down and ate a bag of chips, like um, I went for the vegetables instead. So
Yeah, or you were more connected to your emotional self, where you were like, I just need to get out and walk the dog. I just need to whatever, right? And you were serving
yeah,
your a bit differently.
yeah, and you definitely, once you get into the habit of eating well, you definitely feel it when you don't eat well. Like
Mhm.
you feel the difference for sure. And so that was encouragement enough too, is knowing that if I just eat the good food, then I feel better.
Yeah.
So
And you
yeah,
have less room for the other food too. And you were really good at making like your meals like really tasty. Like you
yeah.
weren't eating boring. You were eating like really tasty. You were still eating out. And so that
Mhm.
variety alone makes it less appealing to have those other foods. Not to say you didn't. And so we
Yeah.
got to a place in our coaching where we were on a call. And I remember you saying, like, hey, what happens if I go over? Like, I got this fear that I'm going to gain weight if I go over on my portions or eat a little bit more of those other foods, for example. And you were like, how do I know like what my limit is without having the fear of gaining weight? And we put in a little experiment there to kind of test the water out. And so this was the start of you moving into being more intuitive, because once we did that, you were like, oh, that's kind of how this works. Then you were, sometimes you were overeating or you were a little bit because you were traveling and doing other things, but you didn't have that fear of like, oh, old habits are creeping up and I'm gaining weight. So can you just talk about like that transition piece?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it was definitely something that I was concerned about, because that always would be the like we called it a tripwire, right? That would always be the thing that would probably set me back if I was back in Weight Watchers days or whatever, right? Like I go on a holiday and oh, I blew it, right? Like I drank too much, I ate too much. Might as well just carry on, you know. But for me with this, having had all of the habits and the practice and being just way more aware of what I'm doing with my body, um, allowed me to go on a vacation, um, try the food, try the drinks, and come back without too much of a concern. I mean, yeah, did I put on weight? Yes, I did. I put on a few pounds, but the nice thing about that is that it actually just fell off again once I was home and making mindful choices again, and getting back into my routine. So that was really awesome to be able to recognize that, yeah, while I may put on some weight, or it might be just because of bloating or whatever, it goes away. So that's nice.
Yeah, because and then the thing is like you're not waiting like a week or whatever to get back. It's like you were back, and it's like, okay, we already had the game plan to pivot back, right? And
Yeah.
so we already knew, like, okay, so the transition time was less, I guess, the
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked to you a little bit about the idea of my metabolism having changed, and I had never considered that before, but by changing, the level of activity that I'm doing and the kind of foods that I'm eating, we talked about how it is possible that my metabolism has changed, and maybe that's part of it,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah, and you were in a self-sabotaging pattern in the sense of like you would overeat and get on the scale. And then part of that experiment was we don't get on the scale right away. We wait 2 to 3 days later. And
yeah,
then to see, okay, well, if your weight is up, then we know that, hey, we went over kind of how much. But if your weight is down by then you know, okay, you got some wiggle room in here. You don't have to
right,
worry about overeating and then sabotaging everything.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, okay. So, the other part of this is we did workshops, and workshops were very much mindset based. And I know that you loved the workshops. So talk
Mhm.
about like, because I think that when when women approach weight loss, they don't like the mindset thing is like this big thing. Like we don't really understand it.
Mhm.
And for you, it was a big part of it. So how did mindset play into like those workshops and just who you are as a person and how you relate to others, yourself, and the whole journey? I know that's a big.
It's a big question, but I like talking about it. It's the workshops were great because it gave me a venue or an opportunity to actually think and talk about um, a weight loss journey. Like that is something that I had never experienced or never had the opportunity to enjoy it. And um, I think the other piece too is thinking about your future self and recognizing where you want to be and knowing that that's not going to happen unless you make some choices so that it does. And so I think those workshops were really key for me anyway, to be able to recognize, um, well, and actually really think deeply about what is it that you really want, and how are you going to get there, and what's going to get in your way, and how do you manage those things so that it doesn't set you back. So I think just having a group of people to listen to and to work with through those things was really super helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And it also got you because you were stuck on a question that you had about kind of like your career, personal life, and it got you to look. So it wasn't just about the food and the exercise thing. It was like you were stuck in this identity thing, and it
Yeah.
was kind of like it helped you kind of figure out those pieces there. So you felt unstuck, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely puts things into perspective, and it really helped me to kind of figure out what needs to happen next, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. What
it feels more like I have a forward motion now as opposed to, just a day to day almost. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's with other diets and with other exercise programs, it was always like a grind almost. And now it doesn't feel that way. It's more like, these are just the steps that I need to take to get to where I want to go. So there's always forward motion, it feels like.
Yeah, well, that's great because you're still doing the daily actions. So the daily actions are contributing to that forward motion. Where would you say your learning or your growth happened the most?
Oh, I think actually really recognizing the hurdles, like really thinking about what are the pieces that cause me to fall off the wagon, so to speak. And really paying attention to those things, and having a plan for when those things do happen, because it's inevitable they will occur. So I think that was the biggest mind shift for me, was to know that those things are coming, and let's put a plan in place so that I can manage it when it does.
Yeah. And now you have all of this evidence behind you to say, well, when this happens, I already have so much experience built up to say I can do this at this time, right? You just keep stacking the evidence every single time. Like now you've gone on, well, if you count like your golfing trips and stuff, and then you count Germany, and then you count coming back to, like, that's like 3 or so more trips to prove to you, like, hey, I can experience these trips differently, feel differently coming home, and I can keep repeating that. And that was one of your tripwires, but end of season was your tripwires too. Sometimes when Terry wasn't home, it was like, do I want to cook for myself? You know, it's like you're a little less motivated, that sort of thing. So we really identified a lot of them, but it's like, you now have so much evidence stacked up to be like, I can be the kind of person that can navigate those things differently than I used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really valuable journey for sure to get to this place, actually. Yeah.
So thinking about like the girl that you used to be when you first started the journey, what would you like to tell her, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. Don't be so stubborn. Because I realize that now, that I was like, God, I don't want to do some of these things. But recognizing that there's certain things that needed to happen before that any of this, for me to be successful, some things had to change. And that was hard to let go of those things. But yeah, I would just say, just accept it.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
gonna be okay.
Yeah, like you have enough trust in yourself that it's going to be okay, right? And then you're 50 now, so what would you say to your 60-year-old self?
Oh, wow. What would I say? Well, I hope that this journey continues, and that I'm well and healthy and active, and yeah, living my best life.
Yeah. Do you feel like as your 60-year-old self project, you can't really predict, but let's
Yeah.
project it. Just, do you feel like the path that you're on will make you a healthier and more fulfilled 60-year-old, and that you're able to keep up with it?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you think about what your priorities are, because they change lots, but when you think about what your priorities are when you get to that age, having never thought of that before, like, reality is that we're getting close to retirement, and I don't want to retire and not be able to do the things that we want to do. So, to travel, or to, I don't know, get involved in pickleball or something, whatever, right? Whatever you have time to do. Like, I just want to be able to be active, and continue to golf and do those things that I want to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then that's again part of that future self where you like the things that you do today drive you towards having that then, versus having to worry about that then, or dealing with the fallout of not having worried about that then.
Exactly.
And I like that you said, yeah, I think like the path that I'm on would definitely get me there. And it feels easy to do that because, it means that, hey, we're out of that short-sighted, we're out of that, just going to do this for 30 days and then, go back. You're out of that loop.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a lifestyle. And that was what I was hoping to achieve, is to make some significant changes so that it just becomes part of who I am day to day.
Yeah.
I
And
feel
now
like,
your husband asking you,
yeah,
wanting to join in now.
yeah, he's very curious about trying some good things. I think having been away on our trips together and noticing that I haven't put it all back on and I haven't fallen back into old habits, I think that's actually inspired him a little bit. So I think it won't be long before we're moving in that direction together. So hopefully that works.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because then it's like you haven't even envisioned your 60-year-old self doing this together, right? And so that's a whole other element that you haven't even envisioned, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exciting. What would you say to someone who feels like they've done it all, they're doomed, nothing's going to happen, or they're older, this is how it's going to be? What do you say?
Yeah. Give it a chance. I mean, invest in yourself, because I feel like that's something, especially as women, I don't think that we do very well in investing in ourselves, and we invest in everybody else around us and not so much focusing on ourselves. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, is that it recognizing that it's worth every penny, right? To get yourself to a place where you're happy with yourself, before you can carry on and do things for other people, right? So I think you can give so much of yourself to your job, to your husband, to your kids, whatever. But unless you're actually making yourself well in the process, it's not really, it's kind of a, yeah, you're going to hit a wall eventually. So I think it's important that you do take the time and invest in yourself, for
Yeah,
sure.
I love that you said that too, because you're right. The wall is like you're I think always think about it like a bank account, and it's like you've used up all of your credit and all of your savings, like you have nothing left, right?
Yeah.
And you're constantly giving it away. You're constantly making withdrawals from that account. And we can say that a 30-day diet or whatever is raising it, but it's not. It's not raising what's in your bank account, because it's short-sighted. And so you still won't end up with enough in your bank account for retirement if you're just doing it in 30-day cut and then depleting it again, and then up and then depleting it. And it's just an exhausting approach that way. You can think about it in financially, like if I was constantly stacking it up and then depleting my money, how much it takes to build that up and get that momentum and stuff like that going. So when we're constantly giving from other people, we're draining the whole bank account. And then how much effort does it create to build that back up? And so what does your reserve look like? And that's what you've been working on, is like, we always said we want to have 60% minimum habits, right? And that's what we're doing, is building, always having a reserve, because then we always have a place to give, and it's well intentioned when we give. And then we always have enough to give back to ourselves too.
Yeah, exactly. That was a huge eye opener for me, and recognizing that that's how it needs to be done. I mean, it's about the only way you can be successful with it, I think.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your story, because I always think that it resonates better. I think just like how you learned from Jennifer Ryan, it always resonates more when we're hearing from what's called like real life people, right? Going through it, and how they feel, how they felt kind of going through it, and how they feel now, because it's been a while since you've been finished too. And so here you are still at it there. So I just want to thank you for doing that.
No problem. I'm happy to share. And yeah, it's been a really great process for me.
Yeah, so anyone who's in the group watching this live or on the replay, then just head to the comments and what's your one takeaway that we shared today. I'd love for you to head to the comments and just drop that there. Until next time, then we're saying goodbye.
Thanks, Cindy.